There are some memories that don't fade. They don't soften with time. They don't blur at the edges. They stay sharp, waiting. Even now, years later, there are nights when I hesitate before turning off the lights. Not because I believe something will appear immediately, but because I know what silence can do. Silence listens. I learned that when I was a child. I learned it the night something whispered my name, and waited for me to answer. I was around 9, maybe 10 years old. At that age, fear doesn't announce itself. It settles quietly into your body and becomes part of how you breathe. I wasn't afraid of monsters or ghosts or anything I could explain. I was afraid of something far worse. The feeling that I wasn't alone, even when I should have been. During the day, my house felt normal. Familiar. Safe. Sunlight pressed against the walls and made everything feel solid. But at night, the same rooms behaved differently. The walls felt farther apart. Shadows didn't sit still. Corners felt aware. My bedroom was the worst. There was a corner near my closet that always felt wrong, not threatening, not violent, just present. Like it noticed when I noticed it. I never told anyone that. I just said I was scared to sleep alone. So most nights, I slept in my dad's bed. It became routine. I'd walk quietly down the hallway, careful not to wake him. He'd lift the blanket without opening his eyes, already expecting me. I'd slide onto the edge of the bed, curling inward, always facing the wall. I never slept facing the room. My dad snored. Loudly. Deep, uneven, almost mechanical. Some people would have hated it, but to me, it was comforting. That sound meant he was there. Awake or asleep, alive, real. As long as he was snoring, nothing else could speak. That night started like any other. I lay under the blanket, listening to the familiar noises of the house settling, pipes ticking, wood creaking, the clock clicking steadily on the wall. But sleep wouldn't come. My thoughts felt restless. My chest felt tight. Something about the room felt strained. Like it was holding something back. The snoring continued. Then I noticed the air near my ear felt warmer. Not the warmth of the blanket. Not body heat. Localized. Specific. I shifted slightly, thinking my dad had turned toward me. He hadn't. The snoring didn't change rhythm. Not even slightly. That's when I heard it. A voice. Right beside my ear. Not loud enough to startle me. Not soft enough to be imagined. Measured. Controlled. Sarah. My name didn't echo. It didn't float. It landed. The voice was male, deeper than my dad's, older, calmer. There was no emotion in it. No anger. No kindness. Just certainty. Before fear could catch up to thought, I answered. Yes, Dad. The moment the words left my mouth, my stomach dropped. The snoring didn't stop. Didn't pause. Didn't even hitch. I turned my head slowly toward him. His mouth was open. His eyes were closed. His chest rose and fell in the same familiar rhythm I had listened to my entire life. He was deeply asleep. I knew that sound. I knew that rhythm. He had not spoken. Something else had. The room felt wrong instantly, not darker, but deeper. Like the shadows had gained weight. Like the darkness behind me wasn't empty anymore. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I didn't breathe properly. Then I felt it. The pillow beside my head dipped slightly. Not enough to touch me. Enough to tell me the space was no longer empty. The air near my ear felt warm again, closer this time. My heart slammed so hard I was sure it could hear me. Then the voice returned. Lower. Slower. You hear me. Not a question. A statement. It knew I was awake. It knew I'd answered. It knew I was listening. I wanted to roll toward my dad. To grab his arm. To shake him awake and feel something solid, something real. My body refused. It was like my muscles had disconnected from my thoughts. The room stretched unnaturally. The ceiling felt farther away. The walls felt distant. Time slowed, twisted, lost meaning. I don't know how long I lay there. Seconds felt endless. My lungs burned from shallow breaths. My ears strained for any sound that made sense. Nothing came. Then, slowly, the pressure lifted. The pillow rose. The warmth faded. The space beside me emptied. It didn't leave with sound. It didn't retreat. It simply wasn't there anymore. I didn't sleep that night. When morning came, sunlight felt fake, like it was revealing a room that had pretended to be something else in the dark. My dad stretched and yawned. "Did you sleep okay?" he asked. I nodded. I didn't tell him. Because some part of me knew, even then, that whatever whispered my name didn't mistake me for someone else. It knew exactly who I was. And it hadn't sounded surprised. The worst part wasn't what happened that night. It was what happened afterward. Nothing dramatic followed. No shadows moved. No doors slammed. No voices called out again. Morning arrived like it always did, dragging normalcy behind it as if nothing had been disturbed. That normalcy felt wrong. I woke up late, my body heavy and sore, like I'd been clenching myself all night. My dad was already out of bed. The room looked ordinary in daylight, the same furniture, the same walls, the same faint smell of laundry detergent and dust. But something had changed. The room felt hollow. Like something had been removed without my permission. At breakfast, my dad talked about work. He asked me if I wanted eggs or cereal. He complained about traffic. His voice sounded exactly the same as it always had. Too normal. I watched his mouth when he spoke, studying it in a way that probably looked strange. I kept waiting for it to sound wrong. For that deeper voice to slip through. It didn't, and that unsettled me more than if it had. I didn't tell him what happened. I didn't tell anyone. Even at that age, I understood something instinctively. Saying it out loud would make it real in a way I couldn't undo. So I swallowed it. But fear doesn't disappear when you ignore it. It sinks inward. That night, when it was time to sleep, I stood in the doorway of my dad's room longer than usual. The bed looked bigger in the dark. The shadows felt heavier. The silence before his snoring began made my skin prickle. I climbed in carefully, every movement deliberate. When his snoring started, relief washed over me so strongly it almost hurt. I stared at the wall again. I didn't close my eyes. I listened. Minutes passed. Maybe longer. Nothing happened. But the silence between snores felt different now. Before, those pauses were harmless. Familiar. Now, every pause felt like an opening. An invitation. My thoughts spiraled. What if it came back? What if it said my name again? What if it spoke louder this time? What if it didn't use my dad's voice at all? I slept eventually, not because I felt safe, but because my body collapsed from exhaustion. After that, sleep became something I endured, not something I trusted. I started leaving the TV on at night. Low volume. Just enough noise to fill the room. My dad complained once, but I begged until he gave in. Silence felt dangerous now. Silence meant listening. Days passed. Then weeks. Nothing else happened. And yet, everything felt wrong. I became hyper-aware of sounds. I noticed things I hadn't before, the way footsteps echoed differently depending on where you stood, the way doors sounded when they were almost, but not quite, closed. Sometimes I thought I heard my name during the day. In the hum of the refrigerator. In the rush of water from the sink. Every time I turned, there was nothing there. At school, I started daydreaming, not about games or friends, but about that night. I replayed it over and over in my head, trying to find the mistake. The moment where I could have stopped it. If I hadn't answered. If I'd screamed. If I'd turned around. That last thought always made my stomach twist. Because some part of me felt certain that if I had turned around, I wouldn't have seen nothing. The first dream came about a month later. In the dream, I was lying in bed exactly as I had that night. Same position. Same darkness. Same snoring behind me. But something was different. In the dream, the snoring stopped. I lay there, frozen, listening to the sudden silence. I tried to move, to turn around, but my body wouldn't respond. Then I felt breath against my ear. Warm. Slow. Closer than before. The voice didn't whisper my name this time. It said something else. Something I couldn't remember when I woke up. I bolted upright in bed, gasping for air, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break my ribs. My dad was still asleep. Snoring. The dream felt too real. Too detailed. The sensation of breath lingered on my skin long after I woke. After that, the dreams kept coming. Not every night. That would have been too obvious. Just often enough to keep me afraid. Sometimes the voice spoke. Sometimes it didn't. Sometimes I woke up knowing it had said something important, something I wasn't supposed to remember. Other times, I woke up with the overwhelming feeling that I had answered it again. I started feeling watched during the day. Not constantly. Just in certain places. The hallway outside my bedroom. The corner near the closet. The space behind me when I brushed my teeth. Whenever I turned, there was nothing there. But the feeling didn't go away. I tried sleeping in my own room once. I lasted less than an hour. The silence there was different. Thicker. Deeper. It pressed against my ears until I thought I could hear my own blood moving. I ran back to my dad's room and climbed into bed without waking him. I didn't care if he noticed anymore. I just needed to not be alone. One afternoon, weeks later, something happened that shattered the illusion that this was all in my head. I was home alone, sitting on the living room floor, watching cartoons. The house was quiet except for the TV and the ticking clock. I heard my name. Clear as day. From the hallway. Sarah. I froze. The voice wasn't whispering this time. It wasn't loud either. It sounded normal. Too normal. I muted the TV slowly, my hands shaking. Dad? I called out. No answer. My heart began to race. I stood up carefully, every step slow, controlled. The hallway stretched ahead of me, empty and dim. Dad? I called again. Still nothing. I stood there, staring into the hallway, feeling that familiar pressure building in my chest. Then I realized something that made my blood run cold. The voice hadn't come from the end of the hallway. It had come from right behind me. I turned around. There was nothing there. But the silence felt full. Occupied. And deep down, in a place I didn't have words for yet, I understood something terrifying. Whatever whispered my name that night had not stayed in my dad's room. It had learned how to follow me. After the hallway incident, I stopped believing this was something I could ignore. Before that day, fear had lived quietly inside me. It flared up at night, retreated in daylight, and stayed mostly contained. But hearing my name spoken clearly, casually, while I was awake shattered the last excuse I had left. I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't half asleep. And I wasn't alone. I didn't tell my dad what happened in the hallway. I told myself it would only confuse him, maybe worry him. But the truth was more selfish and more afraid than that. I didn't want him to say it was nothing. Because if he did, I'd be alone with it. Instead, I became quiet. Watchful. Careful with my words. I stopped responding immediately when someone called my name. I started waiting, just a second longer than necessary, listening for something that might give itself away. People noticed. Teachers asked if I was tired. Friends asked why I was jumpy. My dad asked if I was feeling sick. I lied. Because how do you explain that you no longer trust voices? The house felt different now, not hostile, not overtly threatening, but aware. Like it was paying attention to how I moved through it. Some rooms felt heavier than others. The hallway outside my bedroom remained the worst. I avoided it whenever I could, rushing through with my eyes fixed straight ahead. The corner near my closet had changed too. It no longer just felt watched. It felt occupied. That night, I began to hear sounds that didn't quite register as noises. Subtle shifts. Almost movements. The kind of thing you only notice if you're already listening too closely. Once, I heard my dad cough from the hallway outside his room. I froze. He was lying beside me, snoring. I didn't sleep at all that night. The dreams became more specific. In them, the voice didn't always whisper. Sometimes it spoke normally. Sometimes it spoke kindly. Sometimes it sounded like my dad. That was the worst part. The first time it used his voice in a dream, I woke up crying. In the dream, he had leaned over me, brushing hair away from my face, telling me everything was fine. His voice sounded exactly right, warm, familiar, comforting. But something in his eyes was wrong. They didn't reflect light. They didn't move when he spoke. And when I tried to reach for him, my hand passed through his arm like it wasn't solid. I woke up screaming. My dad shook me awake, his real voice thick with concern. "It's okay," he said. "It's just a bad dream." I clung to him so tightly he had to pry my fingers loose. But even as he held me, some small, traitorous part of my mind whispered, "How do you know it's really him?" That thought lodged itself deep inside me. After that, I started watching people's mouths when they spoke. Listening for tiny imperfections. Waiting for voices to slip, just slightly, out of sync with faces. It happened for the first time at dinner. My dad was talking about work, gesturing with his fork, complaining about something his boss had said. I watched him closely, trying to relax. Then he said my name. "And Sarah, you'll need to." The way he said it was wrong. Not obviously wrong. Just, flat. Like someone repeating a word they'd learned phonetically. My stomach twisted. "What?" I asked, my voice sharp. He paused, confused. "I was just saying you'll need to clean your room this weekend." His tone was normal again. I stared at him for a long moment. He frowned. "You okay?" I nodded. But my appetite was gone. A few days later, it happened again. This time, it was my teacher. She called my name from behind me, asking me to read aloud. Her voice sounded fine, until it reached the last syllable. My name lingered too long in the air. Like it was being tasted. I felt that familiar warmth near my ear, even though she was across the room. I didn't respond. The class grew quiet. "Sarah," she repeated, sharper this time. The warmth vanished. I raised my hand, my heart racing, and began to read with shaking hands. No one else noticed anything wrong. That was when I realized something crucial. It wasn't copying people randomly. It was practicing. Learning where it could stretch a voice without being noticed. Learning how far it could go. The next incident happened late at night. I woke up needing water. My throat was dry, my head heavy with sleep. The house was dark and silent as I padded into the hallway. I stopped halfway. I heard my dad's voice from the kitchen. "Sarah?" Soft. Casual. Like he'd just noticed me. Relief washed over me before fear could stop it. "Yeah?" I answered. The word had barely left my mouth when the snoring started behind me. From his bedroom. My blood went cold. Slowly, very slowly, I turned toward the kitchen. The lights were off. The darkness there felt thick, pooled, unmoving. No footsteps approached. No one stepped into the hallway. Then, from the darkness, the voice came again. Not my dad's this time. Its own. Deeper. Closer. Satisfied. You answer so easily. I ran. I don't remember turning around. I don't remember reaching the bedroom. I just remember diving into the bed, shaking my dad awake, sobbing so hard I couldn't speak. He turned on the lights. Checked the house. Locked the doors. Sat with me until I calmed down. He said there was no one there. I knew that already. That wasn't what scared me. What terrified me was the realization settling heavily in my chest. It no longer needed to whisper. It no longer needed to stay close. It had learned my patterns. My habits. My trust. And it knew exactly which voices I would follow into the dark. After the night in the hallway, my father stopped leaving me alone. At least, that's what he thought he was doing. He checked the locks every night. He turned on extra lights. He told me I could wake him anytime, for any reason. He even let me keep the lamp on beside the bed, its yellow glow pushing weakly against the dark. But light doesn't stop something that isn't afraid of being seen. I stopped sleeping almost entirely. When I did drift off, it was shallow and fragile, like resting on thin ice. Every sound snapped me awake. Every shift of air made my skin prickle. My body stayed tense even in daylight, bracing for something I couldn't explain. The voice stopped using my dad's tone after that night. It didn't need to anymore. Instead, it spoke to me when no one else was around. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough. The first time was in the bathroom. I was brushing my teeth before bed, staring at my reflection, avoiding my own eyes the way people do when they don't like what they might see. The sink hummed softly. The light buzzed overhead. Then, quietly, from behind me. You don't trust mirrors anymore. I dropped the toothbrush. My heart slammed so hard I thought I might pass out. I spun around. The bathroom was empty. The door was still closed. The hallway beyond it was dark and silent. My reflection stared back at me, pale and wide-eyed, toothpaste dripping down my chin. I didn't tell my dad. I didn't tell anyone. Because the voice hadn't asked me anything. It had stated a fact. And it was right. After that, it spoke more often. Always when I was alone. Always when I was quiet. Sometimes it commented on things I was thinking but hadn't said. Sometimes it finished sentences in my head. Sometimes it simply breathed near me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of it without feeling a body. It never touched me. That felt deliberate. Like restraint. I stopped going into certain rooms altogether. The hallway. My bedroom. The bathroom at night. I learned paths through the house that minimized exposure to silence. I stayed close to my dad whenever I could. But even then, I felt it watching from a distance. Waiting. One night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the voice spoke again. Not from beside me. Not from the darkness. From inside my head. You know why I chose you. I squeezed my eyes shut. No, I whispered, my voice barely working. I don't. A pause. Long. Heavy. Then. You listened. My throat tightened. I didn't mean to, I said. I thought. You answered, it corrected. That matters. Tears slid down the sides of my face and soaked into the pillow. I didn't wipe them away. I was afraid to move. I was a kid, I whispered. I didn't know. Another pause. Closer this time. I know. The tone of those words shattered something inside me. Not anger. Not hunger. Understanding. It knew exactly what it was doing. That was when I realized the truth I had been avoiding. This wasn't random. It wasn't a haunting in the way people talk about hauntings. It wasn't tied to the house. It was tied to me. The voice didn't speak for a while after that. Days passed. Then weeks. I almost convinced myself it had grown bored. Then my dad left town for work. Just 2 nights. That was all. The first night, I slept with every light on. The TV played quietly. I stayed on the phone with a friend until exhaustion dragged me under. The second night, the power went out. The house fell into darkness so sudden and complete that it stole the air from my lungs. The TV died mid-sentence. The lights snapped off. Silence rushed in like a living thing. I sat frozen on the couch, my heart pounding. Then the voice spoke. Clear. Close. Unmasked. You're alone now. I shook my head violently. No, I whispered. No, I'm not. You are, it said gently. You always were. The air beside me warmed. The couch cushion dipped. Not much. Enough. I could feel it now, not a body, not a shape, but a weight. A presence pressing into the space beside me, undeniable. I squeezed my eyes shut. I don't want this, I whispered. Please. The voice lowered. I waited. For what? I asked, my voice breaking. For you to be able to understand me. The realization hit me like ice water. This wasn't feeding on fear. It wasn't tormenting me for pleasure. It was waiting for me to grow. Waiting for me to listen properly. Waiting for me to be alone. The power came back on suddenly. Lights flared to life. The TV flickered. The pressure vanished. The space beside me emptied. But the feeling didn't leave. Even now, as I tell this story, I understand something that still makes my hands shake. It didn't disappear that night. It stepped back. Because it knows something I don't. Something about what comes next. I learned something important after that night. Not everything that waits wants to take something from you. Some things are patient because they want you to become something first. After the power came back on, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch until dawn, lights blazing, television muttering to itself, every sense stretched thin. I kept expecting the voice to return, to say something final, something cruel. It didn't. That silence was worse. When my dad came home the next day, I ran to him so hard I almost knocked the breath out of his chest. I didn't let go for a long time. He laughed awkwardly, confused but gentle, and told me everything was okay now. I wanted to believe him. But the house no longer mattered. It wasn't in the walls. It wasn't in the rooms. It was in the space between my thoughts. The voice didn't speak again for years. Not out loud. But it was never gone. Sometimes it appeared as a pressure behind my eyes when I was about to fall asleep. Sometimes it showed up as a certainty, an answer arriving before I finished asking a question. I learned things without remembering how I learned them. I noticed patterns most people ignored. I could sense when silence was about to break. I stopped being afraid of the dark. That should have comforted me. Instead, it terrified me. Because fear doesn't disappear without leaving something else behind. I grew up. Life moved forward in the way it always does, school, responsibilities, distance from childhood places. My dad aged. The house was sold. The rooms that once felt alive were reduced to memory. But wherever I went, the voice followed. Not speaking. Listening. Waiting. The realization came slowly, the way truth often does. One night, years later, I lay awake in a different bed, in a different city, listening to someone else breathe beside me. The room was quiet, not threatening, not heavy. Just still. And for the first time, I understood why it had chosen me. It hadn't chosen me because I was weak. It had chosen me because I listened. Because when something spoke into the dark, I answered instead of running. Because I noticed silence. Because I made room for it. The voice returned the night I finally spoke first. I don't remember deciding to do it. I just remember lying there, staring at the ceiling, feeling that familiar warmth gather near my ear, not outside my body, but inside my awareness. You waited a long time, I said quietly. The air felt dense. Yes, the voice replied. It didn't surprise me anymore. What are you? I asked. A pause. Not hesitation. Consideration. I am what answers, it said. When something listens long enough. My heart didn't race. That scared me more than anything else. Why my name? I asked. Because names are doors, it replied. And you opened yours. Images surfaced in my mind, memories I didn't remember living. People whispering into darkness. Children calling out to empty rooms. Questions asked with no one brave enough to hear the reply. I don't want this, I said. You already have it, the voice answered gently. I understood then. It hadn't been waiting for permission. It had been waiting for recognition. The warmth receded. The pressure lifted. But something remained. Not fear. Not presence. Responsibility. I still hear whispers sometimes. Not calling my name. Calling others. And now I know what happens when someone answers. So if you ever hear your name spoken softly in the dark. Not shouted. Not demanded. Just spoken, like it expects you to listen. Be careful. Because the moment you answer, something learns how to speak back. And if this story unsettled you, if it made you pause in the silence around you, if you found yourself listening a little more closely than before, then you already understand why I shared it. Stories like this don't end when the words stop. They linger. They follow. They wait to be heard. So if you want to hear more stories that crawl into the quiet parts of your mind, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who thinks they're alone in the dark. Because the more people listen, the more something answers back.